My name is Dr. Kevin Pecca. I wanted to make a podcast that exposes people to the true miracles of life and health. All the guests on this show have been specially picked because they bring something positive to the world. They have some of the most amazing and inspiring life stories. These people have a passion for living, healing, and leaving the world better than they found it. There is something inside these people that made them keep fighting through all the tough times, even when people told them it was not possible. They carried on and made their lives beautiful again. And now they are sharing their experiences with the world. This is the Expect Miracles podcast. Enjoy the show. Today on the Expect Miracles podcast, we have a very special guest, celebrity chef Jenifers Iserloh. She is a professionally trained chef, author, and emotional healer, and leader of promoting healthy, vibrant lifestyles through healthy, delicious eating paired with spiritual practices. She is a classically trained chef, graduate of the Institute of Culinary Education, working in the homes of exclusive clientele such as Annie Leibovitz, Susan Sontag, and Jerry and Jessica Seinfeld. She's a wealth of knowledge on integrative medicine, and she's changed her life through eating. It's impressive, and you've written so many books on all the diets, and it's such an honor to have you on the show today.
Oh my gosh, I'm so thrilled to be here, Dr. Pecca. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, Jennifer, where are you from originally?
I'm from Pittsburgh. So, yeah, it's a Burgh thing.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah, great town.
What was life growing up in Pittsburgh?
It was good. We were really into food, but unfortunately my family was very unhealthy. Most of my family members have passed away from obesity-related diseases. I grew up in a family where we were super passionate about food. We loved to cook. I started cooking at the age of 8.
Wow.
But we just ate too much, and we ate all the wrong things.
Yeah. I'm sure it tasted good, though.
Yeah, my granny's a phenomenal cook.
Yeah.
So growing up in this household, I realized that something was off, especially when I got to college and I had a fierce sugar addiction. I struggled with emotional eating big time. It pretty much ruled my life. And I think that's why I had a lot of gut issues too. So I was diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome, which is basically not a diagnosis. It's just like dermatitis. Like you have something wrong with your skin. You have something wrong with your stomach. We don't know what it is.
Diagnosis, yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like searing pain. I was sick. I had to know where the toilet was at all times. And I was in my 20s, so it really stunk because I was dating. And I remember I was dating my husband at the time. My husband's my college sweetheart, and he wanted to go to a Penguins game because he went to University of Pittsburgh with me. And I was like, shoot, if I go to this game and something happens with my stomach, it's going to be horrible and embarrassing. What if there's no bathroom? So I really struggled with food issues, even though I had this like deep passion for it. So it's kind of like a love-hate relationship with food.
Yeah. So when did you realize that it started to become like a serious problem and you needed to like do something about this to get healthy and get better?
Yeah, it was really in my 20s. We moved to New York. My husband worked at Sloan Kettering in cancer research, and he had a PhD in chemistry at the time. And I was working in business. This was way before I became a chef. And I was scared to move to New York because I'm a small town girl. And I was like, New York, oh my God, the pressure. But we moved to Manhattan, and I think I was here maybe 3 months, and I just fell in love. There was so much to do. But rolled in my first yoga class, and I was like, what's this yoga stuff all about?
Yeah.
And I had this fabulous teacher, and she started to teach us right away about the mind-body connection. And that's where I got the inkling that I was like, all right, something's weird, because every time I feel stressed, my stomach would tense and I would eat when I wasn't hungry. So I was like, oh, this is weird. What would happen if I just relaxed my body? Like, what would happen to the thoughts? And I noticed that a lot of those thoughts to go to the fridge or the candy, Snickers bar was always my trigger. So
I'm a Butterfingers guy.
You're Butterfingers, okay.
Yeah.
But, that urge to eat when I wasn't hungry would vanish. And also, I started to kind of get turned off on junk food because in New York, people were really healthy. There's a fruit stand on every corner. And the more I went into my yoga practice and the deeper I got into mindfulness and meditation, the more I realized it wasn't just emotional eating that was holding me back, because I had this massive amount of fear around my creativity, because I had always wanted to do something creative, but I was afraid to do it because my parents were like, no, be a doctor, be a lawyer. And I was like, but I failed math. I was like terrible at all the things you have to be good at to those careers. So So, my husband's like, what's going on with you? You seem different. I was like, I want to follow my dream to become a chef. And he was like, what? So
Beautiful.
I enrolled in culinary school. I was 30, many moons ago. And my whole world just exploded. It was like trial by fire every step of the way. But it's been a really exciting 16 years since that day.
Absolutely. And it's pretty amazing how all these things lined up for you once you kind of went for your dream, and like you've met certain people that kind of put you on a trajectory that is almost unexplainable.
Yeah, this idea about miracles, the title of your podcast, I was just like, oh my God, I feel like my whole life has been a miracle. I came from a place of, and I don't talk about it a lot, but there's a lot of alcoholism in my family. I totally related to your story about your dad when I was listening to that, because when I was 16, I had a very similar. My dad's pancreas exploded, and the ambulance came. He died, and they resuscitated him. And I just went through so much trauma. And coming out of that, I'm just like, God, how did I even have the courage to go to culinary school, do all the crazy stuff? But it's really about healing your body and healing your mind at the same time. It's got to be hand in hand. And
Absolutely.
With that mindset work, I went to culinary school. It was really scary because I had a massive amount of anxiety. And part of that was growing up the way I did and with what happened with my dad and my family, but also a part of that was my gut issues, because a lot of people don't understand. When you have IBS or you have undiagnosed sensitivities or allergies, your brain's a mess too. It causes anxiety. So what people a lot of times think is depression or anxiety or fear is actually your diet, which is crazy. So once I got into the culinary business, it was still pretty hard. I still had a lot of anxiety. I got rid of a lot of my fear through yoga, but then I started cooking in all these New York City restaurants. I was the only girl there. It was tough. I worked with some tough customers, and then through...
Is it as hectic as it looks?
10 times. Oh my gosh.
Probably even more so on, like, without the camera, it's probably even like more hectic.
There's one chef I used to work with. If you'd get into his area, he'd slop hot oil onto you.
No way.
Yeah,
wow.
So it was way tougher than what they show, but it was interesting because once I started working in kitchens, all these other fabulous opportunities, it kind of felt mystical too.
Yes. Can you go into that? Because when you were telling me that, it's like you were just meant to do this.
Yeah, it really did feel like that. And a lot of people know that saying, follow your bliss. And it's Dr. Joseph Campbell, who's like been a huge inspiration in my life. He did The Power of Myth with Bill Moyers. And he talks about when you're following your soul's journey, and I feel like every integrated functional medicine practitioner, every healer out there knows what I'm talking about because they've usually come through really tough times to follow their dreams. But you feel like you have invisible helping hands helping you. And Joe Campbell talks about that. And it felt like that for me. So I started working in New York City kitchens, and I was doing some dirty work, like working in prep kitchens, cutting down sides of beef, peeling up 1,000,000 carrots, doing all this stuff. And the sous chef there was like, oh, you're doing such an awesome job. Would you like to do this internship with my wife? And I was like, sure. And it turned out she worked with Tyler Florence from the Food Network. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I got there and he was working on his book. And that was my foray into publishing. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. So we were doing food styling. He was a great guy. He let me help on some of the photographs. I saw how food styling worked, how writing worked, what it meant to put together a book. We were shooting in his house in Chinatown. It was like crazy.
Beautiful.
So then I went back to it was insane. And then I spent some more time in the restaurant industry, and I just learned a lot more about food and my skills improved. And then I got offered to interview for a private chef job. I had no idea who the person was. And the interview didn't come out great. I was super nervous. But then at the end of it, she offered me the job. And my husband's like, who's this lady that can afford private chefs and housekeepers? I was like, she's some photographer, Leibovitz something. And he was like, Annie Leibovitz? Oh my God. And she's an amazing rock photographer. She got her start with Rolling Stone. She did the pregnant picture of Demi Moore that everybody at the time was like, But yeah, so, I had the chance to work with some awesome celebrities. And then years later, through a very bizarre turn of events, I put my resume in at a placement service and I got to interview with the Seinfelds. And I was like, how is this happening to me? It's like, I'm this small town girl from Pittsburgh. Like, all this crazy
was
stuff.
that in the midst of when Jerry had Seinfeld on and everything?
No.
It was afterwards?
Was like 10 years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is when he was working on the B movie. And yeah, it was so great. I remember going into interview. I was just so horribly nervous. And Jerry was like, what are you going to cook? And I was like, I thought I'd make chicken parmesan. And he was like, that's my favorite dish. So it just worked out so great. And I just feel like every step of the way, there was almost like a presence or somebody helping me. And during that time was also just extraordinarily stressful. You can imagine. Here I am.
Yeah.
All these stars are coming in. I'm cooking for them. It's like Top Chef every day.
Yeah.
And my health started to take a hit again because I was working 12, 14-hour days, and I had started my writing career at the time. And I was approached by actually a group of producers who wanted to shoot a pilot. And they were like, could you do some food styling? So when I wasn't private chefing, I was doing food styling on the weekends. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'd love to do this. And they're like, you know what? Never mind. We think you're the talent. Forget the food styling. We want you to pilot. And I had never done television, and I was scared to death. And I was like, oh my gosh. So they ended up, through another bizarre twist of fate, I ended up doing the Today Show. That was my first time on TV.
Wow. How'd it go?
It went great. But at the time I was doing these medicinal foods, and I was like, oh, this is really interesting. What are medicinal foods about? And at the time I was eating really well, but I just had this enormous amount of stress. I was looking for more writing opportunities. So I had an opportunity to do a book that's Food is Medicine with Bauer. And she's a phenomenal nutritionist who was on the Today Show at the time. And she's like, I need a chef to help book. And her book is Food Cures. And it's all about treating condition-specific illnesses through diet. As a person who struggled immensely with gut health, who struggled also with neurological things, I was like, this is fascinating. So every chapter was a different chapter on PMS, on chronic back pain, on cancer. So through working with her, I started to understand the power of foods to heal. Mm-hmm. And she just taught me so much about the science behind foods and how they help us on a molecular, how they help to detox us, how they help to balance, and how there are these particular foods which are called adaptogenic foods, medicinal foods, how they can be mega healers without having to turn to medications. So that was kind of my foray into understanding food as medicine.
Can we talk a little bit about adaptogenic foods, what those are and how they can help you?
Absolutely. So people get nervous when they hear the term adaptogen, but no need. The answer is in the word. It's adapt. That idea that if you're tired, it can help to perk you up. If you're too hyper, it'll bring you down. So it's like that idea of homeostasis, that the food can help to regulate you. And everybody knows one of my favorite adaptogens is turmeric because everybody talks about it. So over 700 medical studies. This is not woo, even though I'm super into woo. This is like hardcore science and
really strong anti-inflammatory.
Yeah, and it's pretty much healing for the entire body, for the brain, for the gut, for the skin. People with psoriasis use it as a cream. It's phenomenal.
They use it topically, huh?
Yeah, topically. Wow. Psoriasis Gold uses it. Yeah, so the idea that you can have a food like this, and it's a root, and it's a relative of ginger. The active compound in it is called curcumin, which sounds kind of like curry. You're like, okay, curry has turmeric. Yeah. And there's so many things you could do with it. But the whole point to the kind of work I do as a chef, as an integrated health coach, is teach people how to make it taste delicious, how to integrate it. You can take it in pill form, but I like to cook with it.
Yeah.
I put in my coffee. The trick with turmeric, though, that people don't know is that you have to combine it with pepper. Black pepper.
I've heard that, yes.
Yeah, so black pepper has an active compound called pepperine, which boosts it by over 1,000%, boosts the uptake. And then with fat, healthy fat, and hot too. So coffee with a good quality creamer. If you don't do dairy, you can do coconut oil. I can't do coconut oil, but you can. I do organic heavy cream. Coffee, a little bit of black pepper. I also put a little cinnamon in my coffee. That's a perfect mix.
So I've heard that mixture before, but I didn't hear about the heat aspect of it. So that it works a lot better when you have the heat involved in it.
Yeah, the heat. I've
heard people just put coconut oil, black pepper, and turmeric, and they just swallow it. But if you mix around the coffee, it works 10 times better.
Yeah, so the heat is an important component for bioavailability. So all that is how well does your body absorb it? Because turmeric is not that absorbable. People don't know that. So this is why I tell people, get a little fresh ground black pepper in there, heat it up. Fat source is important too. You could do grass-fed butter in your coffee if you can. So if you're not a coconut person. But yeah, so that's really, so the whole idea to a lot of the work I do is how can I integrate things? Because if you're going to be an integrated health coach, you have to show people how to boost things, make it easy, get the vegetables in, get the adaptogens like turmeric. So the other adaptogen I'm working with right now is reishi mushroom. And I'm sure you're all over that because that's for brain health.
Yes, absolutely. Talk about that.
Yeah, so reishi's amazing. Reishi is a mushroom that hails from China. It's kind of like their turmeric. It's like a cure-all. And it's a woody mushroom. It's not culinary, so you can't like cook with it. And it's really hard. You have to eat it in ground powdered form. But reishi just means sage and to be a wise man, basically. And reishi is a mega healer. It's also in the studies, it's called Ganoderma. And, it has active compounds in there, great for cognition. And they're doing a lot of studies with it to help ward off dementia and Alzheimer's. Trick with reishi is that you just have to like try to get it into food. It doesn't taste great. It doesn't taste bad, but it has kind of earthy mushroom. Mm-hmm. So I find with clients, compliance is the hardest thing. So now they're coming out with these fabulous coffees that contain it already in it. But just like turmeric, you can get it in powdered form. You can get a bag of powdered reishi mushroom. I like to actually put it into smoothies and drinks, and you can also sprinkle it into stir fries, into soups. It doesn't affect the taste of your coffee. That's one reason why I also like to have it in coffee. So
if you have 1 cup of coffee, how much reishi mushroom do you like to
half
put
teaspoon.
in? Half teaspoon?
Yeah, and what's cool about the studies is most of the studies are done on a teaspoon per person a day. So you don't have to go gonzo on this stuff. And you know what? If this is too much and you don't cook, just get the capsules. It's just the ground up food. Take it with water, wash it down with something hot that has fat in it that you put black pepper in. Don't make it a big deal.
Yeah, that's great. And you also had a little bit of gluten intolerance, and that's such a hot issue right now. So many people are suffering with it.
Yeah.
How do you know if you have a gluten sensitivity, celiac disease? How does one correlate with the other, and how do people find out if they have it?
Yeah, so being a chef and people are talking about allergies in restaurants always got on my nerves. I'm allergic to salt. I'm like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
So I long suspected I had some issues with gluten because every time I would eat bread and gluten is basically a protein that you find in wheat, barley, and rye. And it's a combination of 2 proteins. It's what makes bread and pizza dough bouncy because they bind together when you knead the bread. Mm-hmm. So, I long suspected something was up because every time I ate pasta, and I was just kind of blaming it on carbs too. But then I would eat other carbs and nothing would happen. I would eat rice and I'd be totally fine. So went to this conference and got tested by regular MD. I'm like, I want to get tested for gluten. Got the test. It's a stool test, so it's really easy. And he was like, nope, you're totally clear. I'm like, But then I would continue to feel terrible, and bloated was the major thing. I was like, what the heck is going on? So I was at this functional medicine, and functional medicine is lifestyle, highly integrated medicine, root cause resolution. And I was at this conference and talking to this amazing guy in immunology, Tom O'Brien. And I was like, dude, like, I have all these wrinkles on my face and I feel like I'm aging prematurely. And he's like, no, you probably just have a gluten intolerance. I'm like, what? I'm like, no, I got tested. I'm fine. And he said, you're probably not getting the right test. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, the test that doctors give you that is covered by health insurance only charts one of the protein, and there are hundreds of proteins inside gluten, and you may have it and not know. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I said to him, you mean I could get rid of these forehead wrinkles if I stop eating gluten? He was like, yes, but I was like, I can't give up my pizza. I can't give up my bread. Like, as a chef, my head was reeling.
Yeah.
So I went in, I got the proper testing, and lo and behold, I had a gluten sensitivity, which was a sad day for me because I was like, So I thought, well, I'm just going to go off gluten completely for 3 months and see what happens. And it was incredible. My skin started to glow. I used to have this rash on my neck that went away. A lot of like my in between the eyebrow wrinkles, my forehead wrinkles went away. I always had belly fat, which I thought was belly fat, which wasn't. It was a muffin top because I was bloated. That went away. I dropped a dress size. And the weird thing was I had anxiety, which I just chalked up to being a freelancer, to being a chef. A lot of that vanished because what people don't know is when you have a gluten intolerance or celiac, there's neurological impact to that. Mm-hmm. So that was huge. And I'm not here to tell everyone to go off gluten because my husband doesn't have it. Yeah. But the trick is if you are going to do gluten and you don't have an intolerance or celiac, you must do organic because there's a dangerous pesticide that they put on conventional wheat, rye, and barley, which is called glyphosate, and it tears your intestines to shreds. So people, please, if you're going to do gluten, do organic. So yes, it was amazing. And what I've learned through working, because now I actually write for a lot of integrated and functional medicine practitioners. So I went deeper down that nutrition rabbit hole. And when I write cookbooks for these guys, like I learned so much more, but I also had just this another layer of massive healing. So I'm wondering if my IBS was actually in fact caused by this gluten intolerance. So the deal with gluten intolerance is if you have it, Your body's basically an inflammation every time gluten touches your lips.
Mm-hmm.
So the mass inflammation, which means neurological issues, weight gain, skin issues, heart problems, everything across the board because you're in emergency mode. If you stay in emergency mode for too long, whether it's gluten intolerance, undiagnosed nut allergy, whatever it is, that can flip you right into autoimmune illness, which means celiac. So celiac is the autoimmune version of gluten intolerance. So basically what happens, different from gluten intolerance, but your antibodies come in, attack your intestines, attack healthy tissues, which you don't want. And I think I was well on my way to celiac or Hashimoto's, which is the autoimmune version of thyroid dysfunction.
I have so many women coming in with thyroid issues. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, the truth is just if you have thyroid, you have to stay away from gluten anyway, even if you don't have tolerance because it's an inflammatory. So
absolutely. And so you've written books on almost every diet out there. What diets are you a fan of? What are just like promotional things that maybe don't work well, but they're getting advertised? What are your thoughts on all the diets out there right now?
Yeah, so the deal with diets is this, and a lot of people say diets don't work. Well, the reason why some diets work fabulously for some people, not for others, is because of bio-individuality, which means we're all very special and separate in the way our bodies are made up. So what I discovered, and this is also through the kind of medicine that you practice, really lifestyle medicine, is once you understand that you have a different makeup, and this also relates to like the apple pear type and also in Ayurvedic, like the different types, the Pitta, Kapha, and Vata, which are like the different, my husband's the banana type. He never gains any weight. I'm the apple. So once you start to understand that you have a unique biology, food and lifestyle relates to that too. And what I came to understand through getting tested. So I actually got the proper test. So there's kind of 3 rungs to the testing. One is testing your gut. So you got a lot going on with gut, and the listeners may have heard of the microbiome before. The microbiome is basically the collection of bacteria, also specifically in your gut, that rule your immune system, how well you digest things, how your metabolism, your neurological health. So you've got that going on. They test for that. That's called a GI map. And then they test, this is really interesting, your metabolism, how you metabolism fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. That's called an organic acid test. So that will tell you whether or not you can process things like the fat in coconut oil. I cannot because of my genetics and the way I'm made. My husband can. And then they have something called just genetic testing. With genetic testing, you know that if you're going to be prone to Alzheimer's, thank goodness I am not, but I am prone to heart illness. So this is why it's really important that I get rid of that muffin top and understand that I can't deal well with inflammation.
Yeah.
Once you get the testing, you have a complete super biohacking package to really understand what diet works well.
Absolutely.
So this is why sometimes when you do something like Atkins, so Atkins is more protein, moderate fat, low carbohydrate. Ketogenic is more fat, less protein, less carbs around the same amount of Atkins. Paleo kind of follows both those systems, but some people sprinkle more fat, some do, but absolutely no grains. So a lot of people experience healing on these diets just for the fact that they're getting rid of gluten and dairy, which they probably have some kind of food intolerance that they're unaware of. So you just have to kind of figure out, if you don't want to get the testing, I understand, because this advanced testing you have to pay out of pocket for. Unfortunately, healthcare doesn't cover a lot of preventative stuff like this, which is so great for us. But for me, the testing was expensive. It was about $350, and it was the best money I've ever spent, especially because I'm in this field, so I really understand how my own biology works. But if you don't have time to go through that or you don't have the money, that's fine. What you can do is experiment. What I suggest is you just first start taking gluten out and see how you feel. If you don't feel any different, you know that's not the answer. Then you try dairy. You don't want to take out too much at once because then you can't figure out.
Right. And how long do you think people should cut it out for to know if it's working or not?
For me, I felt a difference with gluten within 5 days. I tell people 2 weeks to a month, but usually you'll feel different psychologically too. Your mood will pick up. That's going to be a big determiner. But just really depends on your biology. And what we found with my husband, which was interesting, is he's one of those bananas. So he has trouble gaining weight, tall, slim, skinny. But his triglycerides, his cholesterol are through the roof, and it's always been that way. And we were like, shoot, he's prone for heart disease. He could have a heart attack. Like when doctors look at his stats, they gasp. So what we figured out was through the testing, he cannot process carbohydrates well. So I was like, keto, keto, keto. So I put him on a keto diet. I cooked for him every day. He lost weight, which he didn't need to, but after a month of ketogenic diet with no drinking, all of his cholesterol stats are normal now, which to me is a miracle. I was like, holy cow,
Wow.
this is incredible. So diet has a huge impact on how you look and feel.
Yeah. I've done really well on the keto diet. I just hate how it's so easy to like get out of ketogenesis. So like if you want a beer or something, it's like, I just put in all this work and now I'm going to take myself out of ketosis.
Yeah, but that's okay. That's healthy, actually. So what people don't realize is when you do a ketogenic diet, you don't want to stay in it forever. You do it for a period to kind of get into, especially if you're an athlete and you're trying to shred or something like that. The ketogenic, the downside to it, and what I tell people is you don't want to stay there forever because it can be hard on your liver and kidneys, and people don't know this. Because your liver has to excrete bile to dissolve all that fat. So you don't want to stay there forever. You want to do something that's called cycling, which is basically you do a day of carbs. So it's okay to go down the carb route. And actually, carbs aren't bad for you. It's just most people are doing around 400 grams a day. Where you should be doing around 50 to 80. My target's around 50, and I feel good on that. And also for your hormone balance, especially as women in their 40s like I am, ketogenic isn't always a good idea. You need a little carb to balance out your hormone. But when I say carb, I'm talking about vegetables, fruits, and if you do grains, you can do about a half a cup of grains. Like people are doing way. And there's not a lot of nutrition in things like breads. All the nutrition you get in grains, you can get from nuts and seeds and vegetables.
Mm-hmm. And so you're also a wellness coach, right? So how does it work with you and your clients? Do you recommend the food, and then how do you integrate everything else to change the entire picture around?
Yeah, so I started my coaching practice over 4 years ago, and I thought, I'm going to coach women like me. I had this wrong idea of and the universe again just kind of swooped in, and I fell into this community of integrated practitioners. And I was like, dude, I started going to conferences with my husband. He works for the Evolution of Medicine, which was ran by James Maskell, who's just an amazing visionary. And he's all about teaching people about functional medicine and teaching practitioners how to get the word out about this amazing kind of medicine they're doing. And I fell in love with these people. I was like, this is my tribe.
Yeah.
And then I started writing cookbooks for them. And I was like, I want them to be my clients. So I actually doctors. And if you would have told me 20 years ago I was health coaching doctors, I mean, it's insane, but that's what I do in my practice. And I do coach people who aren't doctors, but a majority, I would say 90%.
Okay, so it's mostly doctors, Well, that's great because that in turn reaches a ton of more people with their clients too. So you're starting from the top. That's great.
Yeah, I feel like that is the greatest use of my time. And to help healers heal this world is just, I'm so honored to be doing that. But what I help practitioners do is I actually help them with mindset. Because what I discovered and through my yoga journal is these poor practitioners are running busy practices. They're cash-based because a lot of them can't take insurance because that's not the kind of medicine they do. They're running a practice. They're trying to heal people, and they're going crazy because they're trying to do all these things. Most of them have the diet tapped down, but what they need is the mindset help. So I really help to keep them on the straight and narrow. And I believe that every doctor needs a coach because doctors have an enormous amount of pressure on their shoulders and they're listening to people's problems all day long. So I'm like, hey, I can listen to your problems, but I can also help you multitask. So first thing we do is we talk about what's going on in their life. We deal with the emotional aspects of their stress. And because I was a chef and it almost teared me apart, I know stress. And I teach them techniques to manage that. And then we look at the other two legs, which is really their spiritual practice, because a lot of doctors don't have time to meditate. And I'm always surprised, and I yell at my practitioners. I'm like, you're telling your patients to meditate and you don't meditate. And then I just take a look at the food and how we can make the food easier. They already know, they're already eating properly. All of my practitioners are healthy weight. They walk the talk. Yeah. But I'm like, okay, where can we kind of biohack or take it up a notch? And a lot of them are teaching ketogenic because a lot of them are either in neurology, a lot of them are doing gut health, but I try to figure out what is the best balance for them and how to sneak in even more nutrition for them because these folks do not have time to cook and they have families too.
Well, that's another thing I kind of wanted to bring up. What's your advice for people that don't have time to cook, aren't that good at cooking, but they still want the healthy lifestyle?
Yeah, so it's all about dovetailing things. And I have a new book coming out. It's not out till April, but it's called Superfood Alchemy. And in this book, I really teach you how to dovetail all these practices. So alchemy is basically just the ancient form of integrative medicine. It's about spiritual practice mixed with food and healing. So that idea that it's fine if you don't cook, and I would never judge anyone for not being able to cook or having time, but maybe it's about making a smoothie. But in the book, I teach you to sit down, make the smoothie, and when you drink it, you meditate. It's like, food and meditation together. So to me, that is like a win-win. And what's interesting, when I started to study the ancient practice of alchemy, which is basically like Western yoga too, is that what alchemists teach, and this is phenomenal, is that when you do a practice and you dovetail, it's also called habit stacking, that it actually supercharges it. So that idea, if you can get many things together, so just like I talked about, pairing the turmeric with the black pepper and a heat source, the more it somehow sticks, that the habit sticks. So it's 1 + 1 = 4.
Mm-hmm.
You have a busy lifestyle. You don't have time to be doing all these separate million things. And as an A-type woman, that also drives me crazy. I have yoga. I have cooking. Oh my God, I have a meeting with a practitioner. I'm like, no. Working with practitioners is my yoga. I'm going to make the smoothie. I'll meditate 5 minutes before I meet with a practitioner. And this became the concept for the book. I was like, I have to teach other people how to integrate this so that you're alchemizing your healthy practices.
That's very interesting. You know, when you're eating something like really helpful and it's good for your body, you almost start to feel it right away. So adding a meditation level to that is probably very powerful.
Yeah, ends up happening too is when you start to meditate with food or give yourself that break. The other thing a lot of my practitioners tell their patients is, do not be working while you eat. You got to sit and kind of commune with your meal and chew it and take your time. And the fact that you could sit down. A lot of people meditate with their coffee.
Yeah.
So I have a recipe in there for that turmeric coffee because
I'm going to get a copy of this book.
I'm sending it to you.
Yeah, perfect.
Signed. But that idea that you're sitting there and it's a spiritual practice too, to commune with your food. Because, think about the times where we didn't have this abundance of food and just having that connection with what you're putting in your body. Mm-hmm. That's a spiritual practice. Because people get a little off. They're like, oh, spiritual, woo, I have to do all these crystals and I'm huge into crystals. But no, you don't have to do that. You can have a spiritual practice with your children. Yeah. Your coffee time in the morning can be your time to spiritually connect. And spirituality is about connecting with yourself, feeling good about your body and treating yourself well by eating properly.
Absolutely. And I'm a firm believer if you have chaos externally outside of your life, there's definitely some chaos internally. So if you can help calm that storm internally, it can help solve the problems on the outside.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they don't keep showing up.
Yeah, and it's almost like you manifest that.
Mm-hmm.
That idea. I know I'm huge into martial arts, MMA, I train kickboxing, and I read all about Bruce Lee, and Bruce Lee is like, be like water.
Oh, yeah. I love all his quotes, and his interviews are like unreal. He was next level.
He was incredible. So be like water is that idea of be like a placid lake on the inside, so that when your kids are having a meltdown or something's happening with your parents, they're getting sick because they're aging. It's like, how do you handle all this stuff? You handle the stuff from a place of balance. How do you get balance? Dovetailing healthy eating, dealing with your emotions, and dealing with your mindset. And that's what that trinity is, that body, soul, mind that all these people talk about. The soul to me is really the emotional health, and the spirit or the mind is your mental state and how good you are at calming the mind. But this is what all these yogis, people are talking about forever and ever. And that's why you do the physical practice of yoga, is just to calm the mind.
Absolutely.
Come from a calm place. But eating adaptogens, eating fruits and vegetables calms the body and stops inflammation. But when you realize that these pieces are so deep connected, you can't have a healthy body if you don't have a healthy emotional state.
Absolutely. You can do yoga for an hour and then you go get a Big Mac. Like, it's just a whirlwind of your body doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah. And it's also this idea of vibratory, high vibes. When people are talking about vibes, is they're talking about the quality of the food, the quality of your emotional health. And what's so interesting is when you're able to calm what's going on the inside, you just don't get ruffled. You also don't hold on to grudges. You sleep better. You have better relationships. And then, of course, those magical Joseph Campbell helping hands come out of the woodwork to help you.
Definitely.
Yeah, so that's what mind-body medicine is really about, and it's next-level stuff. And this is also why I always encourage people to invest in your health.
Absolutely.
If it does cost $400, if you need to go to chiropractor and get adjusted and talk about your diet. And that's another reason why I work with a lot of integrated chiropractors, because man, they get it. They see the effects of the emotions and the food on the body. And because they're working with your body so much, they understand that.
Absolutely. Do you have any tricks or dietary tips for insomnia?
Yeah. So insomnia, and people don't realize this, but most people's nervous system is like way up here screaming. Yeah. So the first thing is
just going all day.
Yeah, you got to look at your caffeine intake. And people don't understand that it actually takes almost 10 hours for caffeine to cycle out of your body. So I used to be that big like cappuccino in the afternoon girl. I cut that out. And instead I actually just went to black tea, which has 1/4 of the caffeine of coffee. So caffeine's the first thing. The second thing is you really want to kind of dip your toe into herbalism. Herbalism is amazing. It's a way that you can just enjoy herbs in tea form and really kind of get into medicinal foods a lot. I'm a huge proponent of medicinal foods. And one of my favorites is nettle. So nettle actually comes from that plant that is like has those little pricklies on the end, and it's an inflammation zapper. So the ancient Roman soldiers used to sting their knees with it to kind of give them a little bit of reprieve from when they used to go on those long treks.
Yeah.
But it actually comes in tea form, and you can eat it too. And it tastes like green tea. It's amazing. So there's all kinds of companies that have it, and I brew it. So you want to brew it extra dark. You want to leave it in hot water for at least 10 minutes. And that's what I drink when I come out of kickboxing. And the reason why it's special is it contains compounds that are called nervines. So again, the hint is in the title, nerves. It calms your nerves down. Now, the other tastes like green tea. It's green. It's luscious. I brew you can brew big quarts of it. You can use it in your smoothie. I mean, it's the perfect after-workout drink. And the other one that I really love is valerian root.
Ooh, okay.
But that can be a little challenging because it stinks like dirty feet.
That's a good detoxer, right?
Yeah, so valerian is amazing. And none of these are going to make you, like if you're driving, it's not going to make you crash or anything like that. It's not like sleeping pills. It's very gentle. And they take a couple days to work. So what you want to do is drink them daily. And I would recommend 2 to 3 cups a day because they take a while to set up in your body. Because remember, this is plant medicine. This isn't like popping a pill. And what's great is they'll detoxify while they'll help to calm your nerves. And valerian root is really good because it doesn't smell great. What I do is I combine it with fresh mint leaves, or I just get a mint tea bag and I put them together. But the trick with valerian is it works really well with some people, not with others, but nettle works across the board, I find in my practice.
So I have a question for you. That's a lot of cups of tea to be drinking in one day. Do you, like nettle and the valerian root, do you switch that up? Do you have certain days where you're just drinking nettle?
What I do is I tell people to pick one.
Okay.
So you can test valerian root, right, and see how you react to it. Also, you want to be drinking these in the evening. So if you have your Netflix thing that you do in the evening, brew it before you put the thing on. Like my husband and I have a doctor show that we love to watch. So you could brew your tea then. Another thing that's great is as your workday is winding down, start to have a cup then. And because they don't have caffeine in them. So it's like you don't have to worry. And they're full of antioxidants. So for me, 3 cups a day is a no-brainer. And you want to make sure you're getting a lot of liquids anyway, because people never drink enough water. I typically don't count those towards water. But if I have a client who's not drinking water and they drink that, sometimes they're like, oh, my digestion was so much better. I'm like, yeah, because you're drinking more liquids.
Yeah, definitely. At the end of each episode, I like to ask all my guests, what is one piece of advice that has really resonated with you over the years that you would like to gift the audience? Could be absolutely anything.
Oh, goodness. Just to forge a better love relationship with your food practices. Because for me, emotional healing is huge, but it also just relates so deeply to what you're doing with your food. You can't really divorce emotion from food, and that's been the sweet spot for me.
Beautiful. And Jenifer, where can people find you online? Do you have websites, social media?
Yeah, I actually have a fantastic Facebook group that's free, and I do all kinds of videos in there. It's Body and Soul Alchemy. So that's a great place, and that way you can learn more about the herbs that I work with. I work with crystals, all kinds of stuff in that group. And then I also have bodyandsoulalchemy.com, which is my coaching practice, and they can also follow me at Superfood Alchemy. And the Superfood Alchemy is a little bit more skewed towards food versus emotional healing. But any of those platforms are.
And that book's coming out in April, you said?
Yeah, it's not out till April, but
Perfect.
I'm going to make sure I get my signed copy to you ASAP.
Beautiful. And maybe we'll have you back on when it comes out. You can talk a little bit further about it.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, Jenifer, thank you so much for coming on. Really love this episode. You are a wealth of knowledge on nutrition and just overall wellness. So thank you so much.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And keep up the great work. I so admire the work that you're doing and how you're helping people.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, subscribe, give us 5 stars, and leave a review. It really helps boost the podcast and spread the good word. My chiropractic practice is located in West Orange, New Jersey at Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic. You can also find us on Facebook at Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic. All of my information is on my website at drkevinpecca.com, drkevinpecca.com. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel at Dr. Kevin Pecca for podcast episodes, patient testimonials, and educational videos. I have daily affirmations and inspirational quotes on Instagram at Easel Affirmations, EASEL Affirmations. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me at drkevinpecca@gmail.com, drkevinpecca@gmail.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Cheers.